Spread out. We need holes.
All right. So, what do you think evolved for some of your colleagues to join on voting for this? Was it because it was a different resolution, because of the action in Venezuela?
I think the previous votes have been more hypothetical. This vote's about a real incursion. It's about a real invasion of a foreign country, an invasion of a foreign capital, and a removal of a foreign leader. And, you know, as I've said previously, I have no love lost for Maduro. I've been a longtime critic of the administration. I hope and wish the best for the people of Venezuela and hope that they will find freedom. But right now we've removed one socialist and the rest of the socialists are still there. There are some real questions that will go on that Congress needs to be involved. One, on the initiation of war, but if there's a blockade of a country, a military blockade of a country is an act of war as well. It's also quite expensive, and unless they're all going to quit tomorrow, there's going to be this wrangling back and forth over the proceeds from the oil money. And as you dole it out, let's say we are in control of the oil money, as we dole it out little by little, is it going to go to the man on the street in Caracas who's been the opponent of the regime, or is it going to go to the government, the vice president, who is Maduro's right-hand woman? I think there are so many questions, but I think the vote today reflects that more Republicans are taking it seriously because it's no longer hypothetical but real.
Even though this will likely be vetoed, do you think you're still sending an important message to the White House here?
It's an important message to everybody in the country that war is an important thing and should be discussed. I consider it my most sacred of all duties to talk about whether I send your kid or my kid to war. And it's a vote that our founding fathers felt to a person, from Hamilton to Jefferson. They all believed that the power to initiate or declare war should be in Congress. They debated back and forth whether the president should have the role. They decided that the execution of the war would be the president's prerogative, the initiation and declaration would be the prerogative of Congress. So I think it's just an incredibly important vote. Now, from a practical point of view, we will be on it next week, so we will be debating this. Is there enough momentum from that debate that the House would pick this up? I think unlikely. The House, pretty much, it's not a privileged vote in the House, so I don't know that this ever gets to the president's desk. But it's still an important debate to have, and a long time coming. Because one of the arguments against this is, oh, presidents never pay any attention to the Constitution. Presidents have been doing this forever of both parties, and all that's true. But it doesn't mean it's correct. The reason the Founding Fathers gave this power to Congress is to make it not so easy to go to war, to make it that there would be more fulsome debate before you went to war. They were tired of the internal wars of Europe. They wanted less war. And they actually, specifically in the debates or the Federalist Papers, said we don't want monarchical powers. We don't want, the president will have noticeably less power than the English king had. That was done purposely.
So in the attention of the Western Hemisphere, you were key setting up the call between President Petro and President Trump. What do you think about the call between President Petro and President Trump, and what made you facilitate that call?
I spoke with the Colombian ambassador earlier this week, and he mentioned that the president of Colombia would like to speak with President Trump. And so I contacted President Trump and spoke with him, and he said, of course. And so this is the thing is people aren't all good, all bad, and this isn't, to me, this isn't a vendetta against President Trump. I would be here if this were President Biden or Harris or Obama. I've been here under similar circumstances under President Obama. It is not a partisan thing. It is not an attack on President Obama, on President Trump. And so I had a conversation. It was a good conversation. And there are, on many levels, President Trump, I think, still does want diplomacy and peace.
Are you surprised?
The fact that we didn't leave thousands of troops in Venezuela is to Donald Trump's. I disagree with the constitutional initiation of war by a president, but it doesn't mean that I don't take notice of the fact that we didn't leave troops, that we are gone, and that there is some hope still for sovereignty. When I approached the president, he was enthusiastic about talking to the president. The public reports are all that it was a good conversation. We've had long-standing, maybe 30-year cooperation with Colombia on drugs. And if I'm a small part of facilitating diplomacy, I'm very happy.
You said that he was enthusiastic, but just on Sunday he called Petro a sick
Several
man.
Republicans
have said this is not going to cost American taxpayer dollars. Some have said it's actually an investment that may bring revenue in. Do you believe that? If this is a prolonged involvement, do you believe it will not cost American taxpayer dollars?
If it brings in revenue from Venezuelan oil, and it looks as if we're taking the Venezuelan oil, I think we'll erode the goodwill we have in Venezuela right now. You know, the large number of people, at least half the country or more, has been unhappy with Maduro, with the socialist regime. But if we now say that oil belongs to us, you stole things from us, it's ours, and we are going to take revenue to pay for our military embargo or our military blockade, I think that the goodwill that we have with the Venezuelan people will evaporate. You know, they didn't like the socialists controlling the oil revenue. I'm not so sure they'll be that happy about the Americans. The other thing is it's going to be hard for prosperity to be around the corner. Prosperity will take time. If you're a CEO of an oil company, are you going to invest billions of dollars in the midst or the aftermath of this? I think it's going to take some convincing. And ultimately, I think it's going to take an election for people to want to come in and invest in Venezuela. If there's a free and open election and you had a multi-party system again there, I think there's a chance then you'll get investment. But then we're talking about a year or two out. So we'll see what happens. But I am hopeful. I think it's going to take time.
Did you see
We
that?
mentioned that the president said he's going to veto this, that this is unlikely to pass the House. Are there other ways, though, that you could exercise any sort of authority here? Some people have talked about withholding funds, for example, in the next appropriations. Anything else you're considering?
You know, some argue that it isn't our place at all to talk about initiation or declaration of war, that our only place in discussion of war is over the power of the purse. I disagree with that, but I will say that it's very difficult. And, you know, the thing is, you know, I went to the classified hearing yesterday. Without revealing any details, I'm like everybody else, awed at the amazing ability of our military to do this. This is incredible. I mean, and just listening to the details of what we were able to produce is awe-inspiring. And so you can see how people are really, oh, well, I want to be step forward to cut the military. There's a difference between wanting to cut the military and expand it by 33%, going from $1 trillion to 1.5 trillion. But I think the power of the purse isn't really as useful a tool, and I'm not sure people will cut off in the middle of an operation. They'll say, by cutting off or reducing those funds, you endanger people in the field. My son is on one. I'm saying people will say their son or daughter is on that ship. How dare you remove the money? So I think it's not as effective. That's why it's better to stop a war before it starts than it is to try to stop a war already started.
And then just quickly, in those briefings, were you getting the impression from Secretaries Rubio and Hegseth that they are considering troops on the ground? I mean, Senator Hawley just told us that if the president decides to do that route, that's why he voted for this today.
Yeah. I'm not allowed to discuss anything they tell us in those briefings, although that probably, and they most of the time don't answer questions like that. What are you planning on doing? Questions like that arise, but I have no definitive answers of them saying what they would do next. I think that troops on the ground will bring more votes to the side that Congress needs to be a part of this decision. Thank you.